One thing this film does really well is set up questions and immediately pull you into the world. No cold open, no character intros, just a kid in the dark scared out of his mind. We know as much as he knows. And then, just when you think things look a little more familiar and you might get some answers, the real puzzle is set up.
They know more about the maze than anyone.
Wait, what?
What?
What? You just said maze.
Comprehension skills.
Hey!
You better watch out, Gally. You never know if Scott McCall's right around the corner. I'll also say this movie has made it harder for me to continue buying Styles as the dorky sidekick. Still, the best thing this film has going for it right now is the puzzle, or maze, if you will, that it's building. But it's doing a really great job. So far, the setting is the main character, ever-changing, ever-growing in danger. And the sound design is on point, making the maze feel like a real living creature.
Welcome to the Glade.
Politeness. Something that didn't really occur to me until my last time through is that the party is actually like a welcome party for Thomas, even though he's not technically invited. Every month a greenie comes up, so it's a good way to mark the passage of time, and everyone there and alive for the party has survived another month. So celebrate. Good times. Come on. Hot dang, I just realized that Jojen Reed, aka the kid from Love Actually, is Whitey from Godless. One of those weird couldn't place him situations. Also, watch Godless, but be warned, it's brutal. So, as cheesy and annoying as the weird Glade vocabulary is...
Slices? Mad Jack. What do you say, Greenie?
I mean, whatever. We were all cool with Frack, right? But I get it. They come up not knowing their names, so what are you supposed to call the new guy? It's also insinuated later that each person has different levels of amnesia, so giving people proprietary titles sort of makes sense.
What do you want to be called? Shank?
And you don't need to speak Glader to know when you're being insulted.
Thomas.
Head smack memory recovery.
They don't even try climbing to the top?
Tried it. The ivy doesn't go all the way to the top. And besides, where are you going to go from there?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could build something to get up there. But he's right. Where are you going to go? There are some huge gaps in the outer sections. So even if you could reach them with a bridge, which would take so much wood, rope, and time, they'd fall down every time the maze shifted. And seeing the desert beyond the maze is only going to make you quit faster. Based on how Dylan O'Brien throws himself into stunts, I can't say I'm super surprised he got injured during filming the third movie. But dedication win for him. These dream visions are sort of an interesting misdirection, because our hero can't possibly be on the bad guy's side, right? Hauser? Anyone? I have lots of fears, as I'm sure you've gathered from watching my channel, but being slowly crushed between two giant unforgiving stones is way up at the top of the list. So, courage. Courage I would not have in this given situation.
You don't get it. We're already dead.
Honesty.
Stay with me, Mino. Okay, just a little more. We'll almost stay. Sorry, Green. What?
I love that even though Mino ends up being a courageous, sympathetic character, even he is willing to ditch Albie because of the narrative they've told themselves. Not that the Grievers aren't scary, but it's Thomas's lack of indoctrination that allows him to take a chance and not be paralyzed by fear. Sound design is again on point with the Grievers, mixing powerful sounding mechanical legs with a beastie sounding monster. And then, yeah, Grievers are disgusting and terrifying. These tense hunting chase scenes are where this movie and Greenie director Wes Ball really shine. And for a guy with a background in visual effects, he actually restrains himself quite a bit, but his talent still shows.
Come on!
Again, more courage. And again, nightmare fuel on so many levels. But an awesome finish to this chase sequence. All those guys are alive.
You saw Griever?
Yeah, I saw one.
Modesty.
He didn't just see it. He killed it.
Alright, movie. You cracked through my cynical exterior. I'm feeling the momentum now. Yeah, he did kill a Griever. And John Paisano's score really adds the elation and final acceptance of Thomas. Which, side note, Paisano is the genius behind Netflix's Daredevil, the title sequence of which is only second to Stranger Things.
When I turned tail and ran, this dumb shank stood behind to help Albie.
Sincerely admitting when you're wrong. And that's why we like Mino so much. What? Who's that? No. I said my name was Bombus, guys. Bombus.
Mino, now we have one. You're telling me you're not even a little bit curious? Not really, no.
And everything Thomas does and thinks makes it clear why he's set apart. He is different. It's not just that he's the newest. He wants answers, and that's why he wins.
That's disgusting.
Astute observations.
Starting from tomorrow, you're a runner.
Promotion generosity. This maze model might actually be my favorite thing in the movie. gives me so much joy. And I don't know, I've never been trapped in a maze, so I could be wrong, but something about having the whole thing mapped actually makes me feel like I can take a breath. I like the runner code, but I need to know. Bring back what? Hotties? Homies? Horsies? Obviously it's something that ends in IES.
Your name, that'll come back to you in a couple of days. It's like the one thing that's...
Teresa.
This little nod to Thomas becoming the new real leader about to recite Albie's speech to Teresa before she cuts him off. He probably hasn't earned it yet, but no one else can handle the job, at least in terms of getting them out of there.
I mean, for all we know, this thing could kill him. He's already dying. How could this possibly make it any worse?
And that's a genius way to get the kids to trust Wicked. They're in a situation where they really have no choice. So maybe Wicked is good?
Everything started going wrong the minute you showed up. And I'm betting you know who she is.
What's interesting about Gally is that beyond being just generally unlikable, he hasn't been wrong so far. Thomas does know more than he lets on. Killing a Griever did start a chain reaction of badness, and the escalation of changes, Gally's worst fear, started with Thomas's arrival. They did coexist with the Grievers unless someone broke the rule of being in their domain after dark. And there's no way to know what could happen now that Thomas has killed one.
Chuck, why would you give this to me?
Maybe if you find a way, you can give it to them for me.
I enjoy this little relationship building moment between Chuck and Thomas. Glad to know Chuck is definitely safe. Finally getting to see the scale of the maze makes it way more intimidating. And it's beautifully designed. And every piece makes the maze seem like it's ancient.
You sure about this? Nope.
More honesty. Death from above shadowing. Something I want to explain that you may already understand, but it seems to be listed in the plot holes for this film. When Thomas and Mino went out today, they were going to take a closer look. Mino had no idea what that would entail. He confirms later that he didn't expect to get into Section 7.
7's not supposed to be open for another week.
It wasn't until they get out there that they realize the Griever's return is what triggers the section closing. So when they killed this one, he didn't return to close the section. Then they accidentally tricked the door into thinking the Griever had returned, so it started closing. Still the best thing this film has going, just a race against time. You think these actors had to run for their auditions? #Tower. Well, would you look at that? These kids have apparently never heard of the Prometheus School of running away from things. However, I will say, seeing the maze finally change shape, something we've only heard up until this point, is super satisfying and really doesn't disappoint. Okay, crawling through closing stones is one step higher on the list than running through them. That might be the most terrifying shot in the entire movie. Did they even know there were other doors to the maze? And then this movie takes a turn, from alluding to someone dying in the first act, otherwise there's no tension, to you're all going to die down here, in here, out there. I know, coming off Hunger Games, it shouldn't have been a surprise. Nonetheless, I remember being surprised that age does not save your life. Somebody likes Limbo. Also, the Grievers are, well, they're terrifyingly awesome creatures. Doing cool stuff, looking cool.
Over here, let's go!
Saving most of the main characters.
Don't let go!
Situational awareness.
Look around, Thomas! Look around! This is your fault!
And that's how I was reminded that Will Poulter is English and indeed used to scrub. Have a listen again.
This is your fault!
I need to remember, Teresa.
Thomas?
Potential self-sacrifice.
This isn't a banishing. It's an offering.
Again, his methods are terrible and heartless, but can you argue with his logic? Thomas did something in the maze that made the Grievers come into the glade. So once he's dead, maybe the Grievers leave them alone. I know you're not going to have one of your heroes cut down a fellow glader, but still, he had a machete and he chose to merely incapacitate the guy. So, mercy win.
Good luck against the Grievers.
Have fun storming the castle.
We get out now, or we die trying.
Optimism. Final action set piece is tense, fun, packed with some pretty impressive CGI, and still not without stakes. Oh, brutal.
The sections of the maze, what's the sequence?
One last plot hole I see is how did Mino know the first number in the sequence? Wouldn't you start with the number section you're on? Isn't that the most logical thing to try first? Yes, the answer is yes. I like that we're still not sure what's going on. For all they know, the entire maze could be on a ship in space or a simulation inside a simulation inside a simulation. So the shift in setting only adds to the confusion initially.
Seriously?
Lamp shading done correctly.
Wicked is good.
Well, it can't be that good.
Is it over?
Almost, Chucky. Almost.
Can't leave.
He's nothing if not persistent. What? He had plot armor. He's the youngest. He almost died twice before. Talk about expectation subversion. Also self-sacrifice. And comeuppance. Why would you doubt that an organization that has the ability to create a giant self-powered, self-contained maze like this in the desert doesn't also have the capability to give that maze its own ecosystem? If only they'd had a drone in there, they'd have known to quit a long time ago. Hey, James Dashner, author of the books.
It's time now to begin.
Phase 2.
I get the complaint that this movie is a setup for another movie, but that's never really going to bother me personally. Now, if this movie doesn't stand on its own and only sets things up, that's another story. That's not the case with The Maze Runner. They accomplish a lot in this film regardless of how many questions are left unanswered. I like being told larger stories. Worst case, The Maze Runner is a cash grab, young adult Dark City Cube ripoff film and book. Best case, it's an updated Lord of the Flies meets Peter Pan with a twist. It doesn't matter to me either way because the foundation the story is built on is just that. An excuse. An excuse to tell a story about some kids. And outside of some irritating dialogue, mysteries for mystery's sake, and excessive amounts of peculiar word usage, they're both pretty enjoyable and actually avoid some of the more tried and true young adult tropes. Risky move to only bring a girl into a teen movie about halfway through, and I appreciate the lack of a love triangle. The Maze Runner is a coming-of-age story, obviously, but more specifically, it's a metaphor for the perils of adulthood. Kids wake up one day and everything's different. They're trapped in a life they may not have chosen, and there are all these rules that don't always make sense, and people don't explain anything. They just say,
never go beyond those walls.
But they know that success as an adult is just on the other side of this maze in front of them. So you've got Thomas, who wants to excel, learn, grow, and make this transition his own. And then you've got Gally, who wants to stay a kid forever, never break the rules, or have to face growing up.
We are home.
It gets a little muddled at the end since it was all a test, but the allegory is still in there. And a lot of people seem to not really like the ending for not fulfilling the coming-of-age metaphor. I understand. But you should have seen it coming.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously. It's made clear early on that the grievers have been manufactured. Even the way they inflict death is not organic since the stingers are basically oversized syringes. Also, about halfway through, Thomas says,
Whoever put us here obviously made the grievers.
so this isn't just something that's happening to them the way getting older does. It's being done to them. And while the revelation that it's all an experiment isn't the reason we may have wanted, it sets up an interesting thread going forward in the series. Another complaint that keeps coming up is that Thomas is a serious Gary Stu, and he is, no doubt, but it's by design. I brought this up before, I think in my Godzilla video, but not only is it important to have a character like Thomas to break rules and make changes, because without him it's just a bunch of kids slowly growing old trapped in a maze, but there's another way of looking at it. Try not to think, how crazy is it that Thomas is just randomly the best at everything. These things have to happen to someone. We just happen to be following the person they happen to. Also, his entire backstory is the reason he's in there. I think I'm having a hard time remembering everything that happens in the next movie. But even in the end, Ava Page says he's special.
Thomas continues to surprise and impress.
It seems like they needed to see if he could do it because no one else would step up. And he steps up quickly. The pacing was really fast, which I imagine was tough for book readers as it usually is with adaptations. There's only a few breaks here and there and it really puts you into the mind of these desperate kids. One other interesting thing this film brings up is the question of right and wrong, good and evil. The movie is pretty clear about Wicked being bad, right? They're willing to sacrifice these kids to try to find a cure. So Spock's old saying, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. That's right. The kids do the same thing when they push a stung Ben into the maze when he still seems to have most of his mental faculties even. And similarly, how Wicked is a large group doing these experiments, no one person is responsible for pushing Ben in. It's a group effort. It's another interesting take on the loss of innocence and becoming an adult. The CGI and location designs are pretty great. Shrouding the Grievers in darkness in the beginning added to their terror, but even in the light, they're pretty impressive. The actual maze comes off incredibly immense, and while logically I know what's real and what's not based on construction costs, everything was seamless. Then inside the glade felt homey and lived in. They really sell how long some of these kids have been there. They often use natural lighting. For example, this scene is exclusively lit by the real fire burning, and that's real sunlight coming into this scene, giving both a more realistic feeling. The best thing this film has going for it, after the fun mystery box setups, are the performances. Obviously, I made some Teen Wolf jokes, but Dylan O'Brien totally proved in this movie why he's going to be the biggest star that comes out of that series. He created an amazing character, a scared kid who transforms into a strong and likable leader. The other standout, as much as I disliked him, was Gally. Will Poulter plays a bully with actual reason and some justified motivations behind most of what he does. He's not jealous of Thomas, it's not about a girl, he just hates that things are changing, and he wants to protect his friends and what they've built, since, he's a builder. He goes off the rails in the end, but that's what the changing will do to you. I can be honest and say that I remember enjoying this more the first time through. The slang can be a little grating and feel a tad forced, but that's young adult fiction for you. I'm not necessarily the target demo, and I can see how the slang endears you to them and then brings you into their established world. Still a fun movie, and I'm excited to dive into the second one, but not next week. Next week, something you've been begging for.
Hey! Throw one more of those things!
Go away!
What happened? Just duck!
I don't think she likes us very much.
What do you want?